Saint Lorenzo Ruiz is a Filipino saint venerated in the Catholic Church. A Chinese Filipino, he became his country's proto-martyr after his execution in Japan by the Tokugawa shogunate during its persecution of Japanese Christians in the 17th century. Lorenzo was born around 1600 in the Binondo district of Manila to a Catholic Chinese and Filipino couple. His father taught him Chinese, while his mother taught him Tagalog. The Spaniards ruled over the lands for 333 years, and because of this, Lorenzo spoke 3 languages: Tagalog, Spanish, and Chinese. He attended a school run by Spanish Dominican friars, as well as serving as an altar boy and a sacristan for the church in his district of Manila. The Dominicans, for their part, taught Lorenzo Spanish, as well as how to read and write. So good was his penmanship that he eventually became a professional calligrapher and a clerk. Inspired by the Dominicans, Lorenzo joined the Confraternity of the Holy Rosary. Contemporaries noticed in a particular way his honesty and trustworthiness, to the point that the Dominican friars made him their unofficial messenger as well. Lorenzo grew up and married a Filipino woman named Rosario, and with her had 3 children. He continued to work as a clerk and as a translator for the Spaniards, and their life remained normal. Lorenzo kept his close ties with the Dominicans and helped them in ministering to the people in Manila, especially those in the Binondo district. He led a peaceful and content life. His normal life took a bad turn when he was implicated in the murder of a Spaniard one day. Nothing further is known except the statement of 2 Dominicans that he was sought by the authorities on account of a homicide to which he was present or which was attributed to him. Ruiz couldn't trust the courts. He knew that much. A lifetime of colonial inequality had taught him that a legal battle between Spaniards and Filipinos under Spanish laws wasn't a legal battle at all. He knew that he couldn't turn to the government for help. He decided to leave his home and seek a safe place to hide for a while. He said goodbye to Rosario and left home in the darkness of night. He confided his problem to Father Domingo Gonzalez, a Dominican priest. The priest was kind towards Lorenzo, and he was allowed to board their ship. Little did Lorenzo know that they were part of a secret missionary to Japan. Lorenzo was under the impression that they were headed to Macau. He was quite surprised when they told him that they were headed to Japan. The 3 Dominican priests were Saint Antonio Gonzalez, Saint Guillermo Cortet, and Saint Miguel de Azora and Saint Miguel de Alzaraza. There was a Japanese priest present named Saint Vicente Shiwozuka de la Cruz, and also a lay leper, Saint Lazaro of Kyoto. All of them sailed for Okinawa on June 10, 1636. As soon as the group landed in Japan, they were arrested. A violent persecution against Christians was being enforced by Emperor Tokugawa Iemitsu to prevent the spread of Christianity in Japan. The missionaries were arrested and thrown into prison, and after 2 years, they were transferred to Nagasaki to face trial by torture. The group endured many and various cruel methods of torture. Back in Manila, Rosario never heard a word from Lorenzo, and no one knew what had become of him. Once the group of missionaries reached Nagasaki, they were to face trials and torture for being a Christian. The emperor gave them an offer. They could leave Japan as long as they were willing to renounce their faith. The missionaries agreed to leave Japan, but they said they will never renounce their faith. This made the shogun lord extremely furious, for none has ever refused the shogunate before. Unaccustomed to rejection, the shoguns considered the group's decision as an insult to their empire and immediately sent the prisoners to their slow and painful execution. While they were put back in the jail, they witnessed the tortures other prisoners had to endure for not obeying the emperor. The prisoners were forced to drink inhuman amounts of water. They were stabbed, pressed, soaked, and repeatedly crushed. Their captors emphasized that the torture would stop if they renounced their faith. When Lorenzo saw this, he got terrified for a moment. It was just a moment when he fell into a spiritual darkness. He quickly prayed the rosary and found relief and had more courage than before. He even started comforting his companions in jail, asking them to have faith in the Lord's grand plan. That night, he prayed the rosary as often as he could. Then came the day of execution. The missionaries were subjected to water torture first. Despite the painful torture, the men refused to renounce their faith. Following this, the soldiers hung the missionaries upside down over a large pit. One among the soldiers took pity on Lorenzo and persuaded him to renounce his faith to end his agony. Lorenzo answered, "This I will never do, because I am a Christian, and I shall die for God, and for Him I would give many thousands of lives if I had them. And so, do with me as you please." Lorenzo died from bleeding and suffocation, and so did the other missionaries. Saint Lorenzo Ruiz died as he lived, a servant of the Lord. There are countless miracles attributed to Saint Lorenzo Ruiz. The one that stands out the most was the story of Cecilia Allegria Policarpio, a 2-year-old girl suffering from a rare brain disease. One night, as her family and supporters prayed to Ruiz for his intercession, the saint appeared to her in a vision. In her recollection, Cecilia said she was lying on her bed, unable to move from the pain, when she noticed a light. She remembered seeing a man holding a rosary, looking up to the heavens. The following morning, her illness was completely gone. She was able to sit on the bed by herself for the first time in her life. Lorenzo was beatified by Pope John Paul II on February 18, 1981. The beatification ceremony was held in the Philippines, making it the first beatification ceremony ever held outside the Vatican. His canonization took place at the Vatican on October 18, 1987. Saint Lorenzo Ruiz is the patron saint of Filipino youth, the Philippines, people working overseas, and altar servers. Sorry for interrupting the video. I am here to deliver a quick message. If you think our channel has given you $5 worth of knowledge, then can you take a moment to make a donation? Please don't skip the video. 99.8% of our viewers simply skip this, or many think they will donate later and forget. If you make a small donation now, then we can keep making good videos like this one. You can choose to support us through Patreon or make a one-time donation through PayPal. The links are given in the description box below. If you are one of our rare donors, we warmly thank you. You have shown the world access to good content matters to you. Thanks again, and God bless. Dominic Savio is the youngest person that the Catholic Church has ever declared to be a saint on the basis of his heroic virtue alone, that is, his exceptional goodness. Dominic was the son of poor working-class folks. His father was a blacksmith, and both of his parents taught him about Jesus, Mary, and the saints, and how to pray. Dominic was a remarkable boy. Even as a young boy, he had great faith. For example, he said grace before every meal and refused to eat with those who did not. He was very bright and enjoyed school as well as play. He was well liked and respected by his friends. He showed leadership skills from a young age and used those skills to encourage his friends to holiness. Although he was young, Dominic was clearly different than his peers. Once, 2 boys in his school stuffed a school heating stove with snow and rubbish. The boys were known troublemakers and were likely to face expulsion if caught, so they blamed Dominic for the misdeed. Dominic did not deny the accusation, and he was scolded before the class. However, a day later, the teacher learned the truth. He asked Dominic why he did not defend himself while being scolded for something he did not do. Dominic mentioned he was imitating Jesus, who remained silent when unjustly accused. Dominic attended church regularly with his mother. He even prayed outside the church building. It did not matter to Dominic if the ground was covered with mud or snow. He knelt and prayed anyway. While the children of the time customarily received their first communion in their early teens, Father Lucha recognized the boy's remarkable piety and let him make his first communion at the age of 7. As the day of his first communion drew near, Dominic wrote down 4 resolutions, remarkably mature thoughts of a 7-year-old. I will go to confession and communion as often as my confessor will allow. I will sanctify Sundays and holy days in a special way. Jesus and Mary will be my friends. Death, but not sin. As we shall see, Dominic lived by these resolutions. Once, on the long 3-mile walk to school, an elderly man asked him whether he was afraid to walk alone so far. Dominic cheerfully replied, "Nothing seems tiresome or painful when you are working for a master who pays well." While full of energy and ready to join in any game with his friends, Dominic's health was weak. Dominic's teacher spoke well of him and brought him to the attention of Father Don Bosco. Father Don Bosco was renowned for looking after hundreds of boys, many of them orphaned and poor. In October 1854, Dominic was personally introduced to Father Bosco, along with his father. At the meeting, Bosco wanted to test Dominic's intelligence and his understanding of the Catholic faith. He gave the young boy a book and asked him to learn a few pages by heart. He then asked the boy to come back the next day when he had memorized the text. Father Bosco sent Dominic off to join the other boys who were playing, and then he turned to have a word with his father. Mr. Savio assured him that Dominic was a very good boy and a bright student. To Father Bosco's surprise, Dominic returned a few minutes later. Smiling, he said, "I can recite it now if you want me to, Father." Father Bosco listened as the boy recited the assigned page word for word, without hesitation or any mistakes. With a little doubt in his voice, Father Bosco asked if he knew the meaning of what he had just recited. Eagerly, Dominic explained clearly the meaning of the passage, to the delight of both Father Bosco and his father. Dominic was invited to attend the school he had recently founded, Oratory of St. Francis de Sales, a school, youth center, and hospice that Don Bosco had begun as part of his work with young boys. Dominic was excited too. He knew that if he was a good student, he could eventually become a priest and grow even closer to the Lord. The oratory became Dominic's home for the rest of his short life. Dominic deeply impressed Father Bosco with his desire to become a saint, so much so that the priest began to take notes about the exceptional young boy. These notes would later become the basis of a biography about Dominic. Father Bosco helped his young charge grow in holiness. At first, Dominic thought that being a saint meant being very serious and doing many penances for his sins. In his zeal, he tried voluntary mortification and other voluntary penances, hoping that they would help him to grow closer to Jesus. Sometimes he skipped meals so that he would have more time to pray. The other students made fun of him. But Father Bosco taught him that the best way to be a saint is to do ordinary things every day with extraordinary zeal. He explained that what he should do instead was to devote himself to his studies and to be cheerful. He discouraged Dominic from any more physical penances. Dominic's happy demeanor quickly returned. At the same time Dominic was developing his reputation as a fantastic student, his health began to fail. Dominic was taken to the doctor, who recommended that he be sent home to his family to recover. Dominic wanted to stay at the oratory, but Father Bosco insisted he go home. Everybody expected Dominic to recover, except for Dominic himself, who insisted he was dying. He implored his parents to bring the parish priest so he could make a last confession. They obliged him, and Dominic made a confession and was given the anointing of the sick. His last words were, "Goodbye, Dad, goodbye. What was it the parish priest suggested to me? I don't seem to remember. Oh, what wonderful things I see." Dominic fell asleep and died within minutes. It was March 9th, 1857. And Dominic was merely 14 years of age. Father Bosco was powerfully touched by Dominic, and he wrote a biography, The Life of Dominic Savio. The biography quickly became popular and would eventually be read in schools across Italy. Dominic Savio was declared venerable in 1933 by Pope Pius XI, beatified in 1950, then canonized in 1954 by Pope Pius XII. Oh, Saint Dominic Savio, a model of purity, piety, penance, and apostolic zeal for youth, grant that through your intercession we may service God in our ordinary duties with fervent devotion, and attain the grace of holy joy on earth, that we may one day love God forever in heaven. Amen.